Hello and welcome to another Ludum Dare time-lapse. This Ludum Dare was Ludum Dare 43 in December 2018. The theme was Sacrifices Must Be Made. So for this one I originally didn't really have that much of a clue what I was doing. I had something in mind of sacrificing things in a volcano, so I pretty much just started to doodle at the beginning right away. As you saw earlier, I made a volcano, and now I'm just making a sky background thing, which I'm not going to use now, but we'll get back to those later in a bit. Now I started off making the actual levels, the first part being the actual camera that follows the player around. So I wanted the game to be a 2D game where you control a player in the game that chases around idiots who summoned them, like summoned a monster and then he chased them into the volcano kind of deal. So pretty much my goal at the moment is make a camera that sticks to the level bounds and follows the player. So now I made a simple player sprite of the monster. And I apparently fuck around with the background now via Timelapse, which is a Unity feature I have not used before. So yeah, I made some grass. And now I decided, well, this play looks kind of shit. How about we add some particles to make it look better? Marginally better. Yeah. And now I fuck around with particles for an hour or something. To get them to look decent-ish from what I had in mind. I originally wanted smoke that just emits from the bottom part, which I'm gonna do right now, but later on it's gonna change again. I am just adjusting the particles. Okay, now to actually test how the particles behave when the player actually moves around, I'm just adding a bit of movement code. So you can press WASD or the arrow keys to actually move the player character around. And that works via the 2D physics of Unity. Some more particle stuff. I'm still adjusting particles, so they look decent-ish when I move about. And then I noticed my speed calculations was kind of off, since I originally intended for it to have a different speed for X and Y. Or that's still the actual thing that's in the game, since there's kind of a perspective, but not really. Because I can't art at all. Barely. So yeah, now I'll get back to the camera, now that I actually have a thing that I can follow with the camera. And as you can see, I have some trouble keeping the level in the, or keeping the camera inside the level bounds rather. And scaling the viewport properly. Largely because I just couldn't wrap my head around what was going on at the time. Yep, still messing with the camera. Now I got annoyed at Unity reloading my code while in the game and just destroying everything, because it can reload, but it does not properly reload things, just throws away all the state, so I took a little break there. I'm just doodling on the character. Give him some cat ears. You know, Death is clearly cute and is a cat. Very annoyed cat. I think I now have the camera right. Now I'm just adding a level class to manage the general level things, like returning bounds, handling the tile map. And that kind of stuff. And troubles with the camera still, I think. There's some slight errors where I got some things slightly wrong. Maybe? Yeah. And I added flipping to the sprite of the thing and noticed it wasn't centered, so the particles were off. I'm just looking at adding objects to the tile map now that can block me or the player and everything else that I can collide with. So I figured, you can have multiple tile maps, and then I noticed, there's a Z placement in the brush, so you can place multiple layers with a brush. So I did that. Now I made a rock, and now I'm making a fence as well, which didn't turn out very good. Now that tile map just kind of broke on me and I was very confused, so I restarted Unity. I'm just tweaking the fence now to actually like resemble something that isn't a railing. I'm just measuring out so the poles tile properly. And just adding some boards now. I'm trying to make it look good-ish, maybe. And there I just tweaked the fence collider so the player can actually walk kind of into the fence. And that's where I notice the player does not render behind the fence. So it's like, fuck this. Why doesn't this work? This should work. Why is this not documented anywhere? And at some point soon, not 100% sure when, I pretty much realized, well, the tile map can't do ordering by y-axis, but there is a built-in Unity thing that does, but it just doesn't work on the tile map, so I need to spawn all the objects that the player can walk behind as separate game objects, and there's supposedly a brush in the tile map that can spawn game objects, so I added that in kind of, and now I'm looking at the player particles again, so I wasn't happy with them. I'm trying to make some proper, better smoke particles according to examples I viewed in Google Images, but it's not really turning out well at all. That's where I get a look that is semi-decent. Getting rid of the lower body part. It looks kind of odd with the particles. Now I'm looking at adding a spawn point for the player. I originally thought maybe like a shrine crypt type deal would be pretty nice, but then that didn't really work out as a building, so I decided I'll just make a hexagon circle thing, satanic summoning, what have you. And trying to draw that in perspective and make it look decent was kind of a challenge in itself. But this is pretty much the final version after lots of messing around. And then I wanted to add some particles when you actually get summoned, or the player spawns rather. Yeah, just make a blood tornado that turns black and then the player appears. After some fiddling around and actually scripting the particle effects here and the spawning. And accidentally spawning infinite copies of the player. Some more tweaking, and there you go. I'm touching the player particles again. So I have the smoke on the player in local space and smoke that actually follows the player in world space as two separate things. I'm adding crowd build now, so I can have builds that I can just easily share with people. I'm adding signs towards the goal, or the exit where you want to push people, the volcano now. Now I'm writing the code for the sacrifice victims, so they run away from the player. Here I'm having some issues where my naive thing, just run away from the player, is making them get stuck against the walls and especially corners. So I'm spending some time here to make them behave a bit more sane, like slightly, not super good. My first attempt was just deflect off the wall, but that didn't turn out very well. So I'm attempting to do some fancier stuff here where the thing will run along the wall instead of just into it. I'm just taking a thinking break here, which usually helps if you just step away, you'll have a better idea. Adding some helper classes for layers and the collisions. Now the actual idea is just to array cast and check if there's anything in front of the victim that can or will collide with if it keeps running. And in that case, just run along the wall. Preferably away from the player. And this doesn't handle corners, but I just decided it was good enough and didn't bother spending more time on it. So now I'm actually making the sprites for the first intended thing that is you can victimize, but it turned out to be the only thing you can victimize. Just didn't really have the time to make another sprite or two. Originally tended to have a man, a woman, and like a sheep or a dog or something, but that just didn't work out. This Ludum Dare was a bit more relaxed on me, as you might have noticed at the start. I started quite late. I've also used Unity this time, so I really wanted the web build. I just took it easy this time. It's also been on and off for me due to things being in the way of the actual dates of the events. Yeah, just doing more walk animations. I'm trying to figure those out. Make them actually look like something that might maybe be a human being with a slight movement impairment. Which turned out somewhat successful. I'm just fiddling around with the movement code again. You can chase the player around better. And just some derping before I go to bed. This is after I've slept. There's 11.5 hours left. And now I'm actually setting on to making the goal. The goal sprite, which is just like the base of the volcano, like a little rock formation at the edge of the map, which I intended to change, but this is the sprite that has been left in the game. Because as things tend to go with Ludum Dare, kind of leave a lot of concept and doodle arts in. Now I'm actually doing some score things, which I then decided to remove and replace, because I want to have a separate score screen. Making some text that pops up when you finish the level now. First, the excellent one when you kill or push away into the volcano everything before the time ends, then, or the out of time one, which happens when you run out of time, because there is a time limit on the level. Okay, now that I have the level text done, I wanted to add a tutorial info overlay that appears when you first start the game, with the very hard to grasp controls. Just a quick overview and the objective of what you're supposed to do. So I really despise things or games that do not have an in-game overview of these. You actually have to go back and look at the entry to see how you actually play the game. So having that in-game is really a must for me, and it's so little effort. Yeah, and this is where I plan to have another like sheep or dog thing that you can chase away and just put to-do over it. And then here I thought, oh, I should tilt that to-do, it would look so much better, but no. The resolution was so small and I didn't want to scale that up more, that it just didn't work to have it angled. Now here I'm actually moving on to the screen where you get scored for the humans jump into the volcano and you get points. The challenge on this one was that I want to have this as a fixed screen, so 1:1 aspect ratio I believe this is. So I needed to have some bars on the other side of the screen and had to have the camera properly scale to add bars on the bottom or top, bottom, top and left and right, depending on what resolution you're on. So I'm just fucking around with more camera stuff now. And then I'm adding the bars to the left and to the right now, which are going to be textured horribly. Yep. Horribly. Now the actual script that does the animation of the score. Pretty much where things jump into the volcano, you get points. Just add a collider under the bridge where the things will walk around, and I was having some trouble due to the victims being centered, like their point being in the center, so I was spawning them with their legs clipped into the floor, which was causing some issues. I was figuring out the animation, how I wanted to look, and it turned out this really derpy look, and I just love it, so I left it in. Just adding some lava particles once the player touches the bottom of the volcano. actually get some lava splatter out. Yeah. And so once you've finished all the levels, the game over text will pop up, and obviously you have to draw that. It's add a restart functionality. And that is pretty much that. I take another break over here. And now we've got 5 hours left. I think I took a food break there. And then I had the misguided idea, let's draw a diagonal fence so I can connect things better. Which didn't work out because perspective is hard. And then that was like, let's just draw it as it would be in game, and that just didn't work either. So I just gave up on it instead of wasting more time. And here I'm actually making the second level of the game. I noticed I can't flip or mirror the actual goal sign, so I have to make a second version. One of the downsides of having text on textures, you can't mirror them. Just some playtesting and some little tweaks to the AI. I decided to, instead of having them run at full speed all the time, to just make them run based on how far away. So if it's just outside the fear radius, or just inside the fear radius, they'll just casually stroll. And the closer the player gets, the more they'll run. You missed the third level, and this is the last one for just testing. And that is all of them. I'm just going through all of them now again. Just doing some little tweaks, adding a diagonal collider there because things would get stuck there. And now I'm pretty much moving on to sounds. First ended up trying to record a splat sound for the victims hitting the lava in the volcano, which didn't work out too well. Now I'm doing the footstep sounds and adding the footstep sounds to the player. I just scrapped the volcano sound, and then I went looking for them generators you have, and found a surprisingly good online version, the JFXer. And I generated some effects for that here, for collecting or sending out a victim, a little ding sound. And then I recorded a sound for the game over and level finish text popping up. I just took out that four-legged thing. The tutorial text now. I'm trying to make a loop for the monster player now. That constantly plays while he's active, gets louder when he runs around. I'm adding time scoring to the game, where you get a point for each second left on the clock. That also plays a little sound. Just running through all the levels again, seeing what score you can get. And here I'm pretty much satisfied with the game, and I added Mac and Linux build targets. I'm pretty much just waiting for the game, preparing my Ludum Dare entry on the website, taking some screenshots. Checking all the boxes, adding links, uploading stuff on GitHub soon. Actually setting up a GitHub Pages branch for the web game, so it's hosted on there. Don't have to deal with any of that. I'm pretty much just waiting for the last WebGL build now, and I'll be done. So I've just uploaded that, and now notice the index HTML layout is kind of ugly. So I tweaked that, added a dark background, took out the Unity logo, add the link back. And now this is the game. Enjoy.
You